There's a tiny dot sitting at the top of your phone right now. You have seen it before. Maybe you ignored it. Maybe you told yourself it was nothing. But here is what nobody is telling you. That dot is the only warning you're ever going to get. And in some cases, you are not even getting that. Right now, at this very moment, there are apps on your phone that have been granted permission to listen. Not hypothetically, not theoretically, actually, silently, actively listening. And the most terrifying part, the people who built the system designed to warn you have already been defeated. There is something sitting in your pocket right now that knows more about you than your closest friend. It knows where you sleep. It knows what time you wake up. It knows the name of the person you called at 2 a.m. It has heard your arguments, your private conversations, your whispered fears. And for years, you have been told that this is fine, that there are protections in place, that there are warnings, that you would know if something was wrong. You were told to trust the dot, the orange dot. That tiny, almost insignificant circle that appears in the upper right corner of your iPhone screen. Most people see it and think nothing of it. They assume it means they are on a call or recording a voice note or talking to Siri. They glance at it, they move on, they forget it was ever there. But here is what most people are not seeing. That dot is not just a feature, it is a confession. Every single time that dot appears, your phone is telling you something it was not designed to hide. It is telling you that your microphone is alive. That something, some application, some process, some piece of code buried inside your device has reached into the hardware of your phone and switched on the single most intimate piece of technology you carry with you everywhere. Think about what that means. Your microphone is not just a recording device. It is the most direct pipeline into your private life that technology has ever created. It does not capture your browsing history. It does not read your emails. It listens to the actual real-time unfiltered sound of your existence, the conversations you have with your doctor, the arguments you have with your spouse, the things you say to your children when you think no one is paying attention. The microphone does not discriminate. It does not judge. It simply records. And the orange dot, that small, almost dismissive circle, is the only thing standing between your private world and everything else. Apple introduced this system with iOS 14 in 2020. It was presented as a transparency feature, a privacy indicator, a way for users to reclaim some control in an ecosystem where control had been steadily slipping away. The logic was elegant in its simplicity. If an app activates your microphone, the dot appears. You see the dot, you know something is happening. You can investigate. You can revoke access. You're informed. You're in control. For millions of people, this was enough. It felt like a solution. But here is where it gets complicated, because the dot only works if the people who want to watch you are playing by the rules. And as of February 2026, there is now definitive, technically documented proof that the most sophisticated actors in the surveillance world are not playing by any rules at all. Researchers at Jamf Threat Labs, one of the most respected mobile security firms in the industry, published a reverse engineering analysis that broke open the entire assumption upon which the orange dot was built. They were analyzing a piece of spyware called Predator, the flagship surveillance product of a European company called Intellexa, also known as Cytrox. And what they found inside that malware was not just alarming. It was the kind of discovery that changes the entire conversation about what privacy actually means in the modern world. Deep inside the spyware's helper module, the researchers documented a discrete, purpose-built capability traced to a routine named hidden dot setup hook. Its only job is to make the recording indicators disappear, not slow them down, not delay them, not reduce them, disappear them entirely, gone, as if they never existed, as if your phone was sitting completely idle in your pocket while your microphone was, in fact, fully operational and transmitting everything it heard. Read that again. There's a function inside this spyware whose sole purpose, whose entire reason for existing, is to make the orange dot vanish, not as a side effect, not accidentally, deliberately, architecturally. Someone sat down, wrote code, tested it, refined it, and deployed it specifically to eliminate the one warning system that billions of people trust to tell them when they are being recorded. This is not a bug. This is a feature. And that distinction matters more than almost anything else in this story. The current version of iOS is iOS 26.3. And through reverse engineering Predator spyware, researchers found a single interception point that defeats both the green camera dot and the orange microphone dot simultaneously. One hook, one surgical intervention, two privacy indicators neutralized with a precision that speaks to the level of engineering investment behind it. These are not amateur hackers working out of a basement. This is a commercial surveillance company with nation-state clients, government contracts, and a technical team capable of building capabilities that can outmaneuver the engineering of one of the most powerful technology companies on the planet. But to understand why this matters so much, you have to understand what the orange dot actually protects. and why that protection was necessary in the first place. When Apple launched iOS 14 in September 2020, the technology industry was in the middle of a reckoning. The previous years had exposed something that many people suspected but few could prove, that the apps living on our phones were doing things with our data that went far beyond what they told us. Social media companies had been caught harvesting location information. Gaming applications had been found running in the background long after they were closed. Navigation tools had been accused of selling movement data to insurance companies. And underneath all of it, running like a quiet current through the entire digital economy, was a growing body of evidence that our phones were listening to us in ways we had never agreed to. You have felt this. Almost everyone has felt this. You talk about something, a specific product, a specific place, a specific topic, and then within hours, sometimes minutes, you see an advertisement for exactly that thing. Researchers and journalists have tested this phenomenon dozens of times. The results are messy, often inconclusive, complicated by the extraordinary sophistication of modern behavioral tracking, but the feeling never goes away. And the feeling is not irrational. Spyware such as Pegasus can activate a microphone remotely, though these attacks are understood to target specific individuals rather than general consumers. Data brokers such as Axiom and LiveRamp compile behavioral profiles that follow users across devices, and that is the real everyday privacy risk. But here's the thing about the everyday risk. It is not actually separate from the spyware risk. They are 2 points on the same spectrum. The mechanisms are different, the scale is different, but the underlying truth is identical. Your phone is an extraordinarily powerful surveillance device, and the default assumption has shifted from protection to exploitation. CERTO's 2025 Mobile Security Roundup, which analyzed nearly 600,000 device scans, found that almost 7% of devices showed medium or high security threats, many involving spy apps, capable of tracking location, or silently recording the microphone and camera. 7%. That sounds small until you do the math. There are over 1 billion iPhone users in the world. 7% of 1 billion is 70 million people. 70 million devices with active, documented security threats, serious enough to include the possibility of microphone or camera compromise. And that number comes only from people who voluntarily ran a security scan, which means the actual population of compromised devices could be significantly higher, and this is where everything changes. Because the orange dot was always presented as a binary system. Either it is on, meaning something is listening, or it is off, meaning you are safe. That binary was always imperfect. There have always been edge cases, glitches, background processes that triggered the indicator for benign reasons, app behaviors that were ambiguous. But the basic premise held. The dot meant something was happening. The absence of the dot meant nothing was happening. That was the deal. That was the contract Apple made with its users when it built the system. Jamf researchers who analyzed the malware in February 2026 discovered that Predator achieves this invisibility without exploiting new iOS vulnerabilities. Instead, it leverages existing kernel access to manipulate the system at its core. The malware intercepts sensor data before privacy indicators can display, creating perfect surveillance conditions. The implication of this is staggering. Apple does not need to have a vulnerability for this attack to work. The spyware does not need to break down a wall to get inside. It needs only to have already gotten through the door, by whatever means it used to initially compromise the device, and then it turns off the alarm system from the inside. The house is still locked. The neighbors still think everything is fine. The only thing that has changed is that the alarm is no longer making noise. Without indicators lighting up on the status bar, the spyware activity remains completely hidden to the regular user. Completely. Not partially. Not approximately. Completely. Now here is what most people are not seeing when they read about this in the headlines. The immediate response, the reassuring, tempered, nuanced response, is always some variation of the same argument. Predator is expensive. It is used against high-value targets, journalists, activists, politicians, executives. It is not coming for ordinary people. You do not need to worry about this. And statistically, that argument is correct. This level of attack requires the device to already be fully compromised at the kernel level, typically through expensive zero-day exploits. It is not something a jealous partner or nosy coworker can deploy. It is used primarily against high-profile targets like journalists, politicians, and executives. But here's the problem with that argument. It was also used about Pegasus, the Israeli-developed spyware that preceded Predator in the global surveillance conversation, that was originally sold with promises it would only be used against terrorists and serious criminals. And then the Pegasus Project, a consortium of 17 media organizations who spent months analyzing leaked data, revealed that the targets included journalists in Mexico, activists in Rwanda, a French president, a sitting head of state, and an unknown number of ordinary people who happened to be adjacent to people of interest. The high-value targets only promise was not a technical limitation. It was a sales pitch, and sales pitches change The commercial spyware industry does not have a fixed price. It has a market. And markets respond to demand. What costs $100,000 to deploy today costs significantly less when the technology matures, when competitors enter the space, when the zero-day exploits it depends on are reverse engineered and replicated. The history of every surveillance technology ever created follows the same arc. It starts at the top, targeted and expensive, and it works its way down until it is available to anyone willing to pay. That is not speculation. That is the documented history of the surveillance industry from the 20th century to the present. And this is where you need to understand what the orange dot was actually built to protect against, and where it still does its job, right now in 2026, for the vast majority of the threats that most people actually face. Because while Predator is targeting journalists and politicians, there's a completely separate ecosystem of surveillance happening at a scale that makes Predator look like a boutique operation. It is not spyware, it is not malware, it is not illegal, it is your app permissions. And the orange dot, when it is working correctly, is your single most powerful tool for managing it. The real issue here is not any secret recording by the system itself, but applications that were given access long ago and still retain it. It is also important to understand how modern apps bundle feature requests. A social media app, for example, may request microphone access for voice messaging. You tap Allow in 2021, you forget about it in 2022. By 2026, that app has had microphone access for 5 years. It has been through 4 ownership changes. It has been updated dozens of times, and each update has introduced new capabilities, new data sharing partnerships, new advertising integrations. But your original permission, the one you granted, in a moment of impatience, because you just wanted to use the app and the permission request was in the way, the permission still stands. It has never expired, it has never been reviewed, it is still there. More than 250 apps on the Google Play Store were found to run software that documents the television advertisements and shows people watch, with the information collected, even when apps are not actively running and sold onto advertisers. This was not spyware. This was not a hack. This was a piece of software built by a company called Alfonso, distributed legally, buried in the terms of service that nobody reads, embedded in applications including children's games. The microphone was being used to listen for audio signatures in television broadcasts, identifying what you watched, when you watched it, how long you watched it, and feeding that information into advertising databases. No orange dot required because the apps had your permission. They always had your permission. You just did not know what you had agreed to. Nearly 50% of consumer data collected by companies is leveraged for personalized or targeted advertising, according to 2026 data privacy research. The remaining 50% supports risk modeling for insurance and credit, employment screening, identity verification, government intelligence, and sale to other data brokers for further aggregation. The data that flows from your phone does not stay in one place. It moves. It gets sold, packaged, repackaged, resold, combined with data from other sources, enriched with information bought from retailers and hospitals and financial services companies, and assembled into a profile of you that is almost certainly more detailed and more accurate than any profile you have ever consciously created of yourself. 92% of Americans report being concerned about their privacy when using the internet, yet only 3% say they actually understand how current online privacy laws work. That gap between the concern and the comprehension is not an accident. It is the operating space of an industry worth hundreds of billions of dollars. As long as people feel vaguely uneasy but do not understand specifically what is happening, they will continue to grant permissions they do not mean to grant, accept terms they have not read, and use applications that are harvesting far more from them than they realize. But here is where the story gets darker, because there's a layer between the orange dot world, where your permissions determine what apps can hear, and the predator world, where the most sophisticated state-sponsored spyware bypasses the dot entirely. And that middle layer is where most of the real danger for most people actually lives in 2026. The predator spyware captures VoIP audio through a separate module. Unlike Hidden Dot, the VoIP recording module does not directly suppress microphone indicators. It relies on stealth techniques to remain unnoticed. These modules can write audio data to unusual paths and manipulate system processes, making standard detection approaches difficult. The sophistication of these techniques is not static. It evolves. The researchers who found Hidden Dot found it because they went looking with extraordinary technical expertise and the right tools. The vast majority of the world's iPhone users do not have access to forensic analysis software. They have the orange dot, and they have been told the orange dot is enough. Beyond visual indicators, Apple provides the App Privacy Report, a dashboard available in Settings that shows how often each app accesses sensitive resources, such as location, photos, camera, microphone, or contacts. With this tool, Users can see if an application is requesting information more often than expected, which could indicate problematic behavior. This is important. The app privacy report is genuinely powerful and genuinely underused. It is not in the conversation the way the orange dot is. Nobody posts about it on social media. Nobody includes it in the casual 10-second phone security tips that circulate endlessly online. But it is sitting inside your settings right now, and it contains information that would genuinely surprise you. Which app accessed your microphone 4 times last night while you slept? Which app checked your location 17 times in a single hour? Which app requested access to your contacts for the 5th time this week when you have never once used its contact-related features? This is the data. The orange dot shows you a moment. The app privacy report shows you the pattern. And the pattern is where the truth lives. So what do you actually do? Because the honest answer, the answer that the mainstream conversation almost never arrives at, is not simple. It is not one setting you toggle and everything becomes safe. The threat landscape in 2026 is layered in a way that requires a layered response. And the first step is understanding what layer of the threat you're actually managing. If your concern is the commercial data collection layer, the app permissions, the behavioral tracking, the microphone access you granted 3 years ago and forgot about, the orange dot is your friend. Watch it. Take it seriously. When it appears, and you're not on a call, not recording, not using a voice assistant, investigate it immediately. The best first step when you have an orange dot, but are not doing anything on your phone where the microphone would need to be capturing audio, is to turn it off completely and back on. A restart will terminate most background processes. If the dot reappears after the restart without a clear explanation, that is the signal to go deeper. Go to your settings. Navigate to privacy and security. Open microphone. What you will find there is a list of every application on your device that has ever requested microphone access, and a toggle next to each one showing whether that access is currently granted. Go through that list methodically. Not quickly, methodically. For each application, ask yourself one simple question. Does this app have any legitimate reason to access my microphone? If the answer is no, if it is a shopping application, a gaming app, a news reader, a tool that has no voice functionality whatsoever, revoke the access. Not because you know it is doing something wrong, because there is no reason for it to have permission in the first place, and permissions that exist can always be exploited either by the app itself or by a future version of the app after an acquisition or policy change. On iPhone, go to Settings, then Privacy and Security, and select Microphone or Camera to turn off access for any app you do not trust. On Android, go to Settings, then Apps, then Permissions, then tap Camera or Microphone to make changes. This takes 10 minutes. It costs nothing. And it meaningfully reduces the surface area of legitimate legal data collection that flows from your device every day. It will not stop Predator. It will not stop a nation state. But it will stop the 47 applications that have been quietly accumulating permissions since you first downloaded them, operating in the background of your digital life, sending data you never meant to share to servers and jurisdictions you have never thought about. Even when you are not actively using them, some apps continue running in the background and collect data, access sensors, or listen through granted microphone permissions. Limiting background activity helps prevent apps from secretly recording or transmitting data. On Android, this extends to battery restriction settings that can prevent apps from operating when the screen is off. On iPhone, iOS manages background processing more tightly, but the principle holds. The fewer permissions you grant, and the more deliberately you manage the ones that exist, the narrower the window through which your data can escape. Then there is the harder conversation. The one that does not end with a settings menu. Because if the threat you face is not the commercial data layer but the spyware layer, if there is reason to believe that your device has been targeted by the kind of capability that can suppress the orange dot itself, then the settings menu is not going to save you. For users with serious concerns about being surveilled, a deeper device scan is the most reliable way to check for threats that the indicators cannot reveal. Third-party tools like Certo Anti-Spy exist precisely for this purpose, offering forensic-level analysis that goes far below what the native iOS interface can show. But even these tools have limits. The most sophisticated spyware is built specifically to evade them. The harder truth is this: if a nation-state or a well-funded adversary has decided to surveil your device, and if they have deployed the kind of capability that Jamf documented in February 2026, your orange dot will not save you. Nothing on your phone will save you, because the threat is not operating at the level of the phone. It is operating at the level of the operating system itself, underneath the phone, in the kernel, in the hardware abstraction layer, in the spaces between the software you can see and the machinery it runs on. Predator does not operate in isolation. It belongs to a growing family of commercial spyware tools that prioritize post-exploitation stealth over initial entry. While tools like Pegasus have historically focused on zero-click infection and data exfiltration, Predator excels at maintaining invisibility during active surveillance. Its operators can enable ambient listening, VoIP recording, or live camera feeds without triggering any of the visual safeguards users have come to trust. Ambient listening. Think about what that phrase means. Not activating the microphone during a call, not recording when you press a button. Ambient listening means the microphone is on when your phone is sitting on the table next to your dinner, when it is charging on the nightstand beside your bed, when it is in the seat pocket of an airplane or sitting face down on a conference table during a meeting you thought was private. Ambient listening is the microphone as a permanent open channel, a live feed of the acoustic environment of your entire life, transmitted continuously to whoever is holding the receiving end, and the orange dot is not on. You would never know. In December 2024, Apple agreed to pay $95 million to settle a lawsuit alleging it sent data recorded by Siri without consent to third parties. Just over a week later, the company stated it never used Siri data for marketing or advertising purposes and never sold it to anyone for any purpose. That settlement, $95 million, did not come with an admission of wrongdoing. It came with a check, and a check is not an answer. It is a transaction. It closes the legal case without closing the question of what actually happened in the years that Siri was capturing audio it was not supposed to capture, and where exactly that audio went, and what exactly was done with it. These are not paranoid questions. They are the questions that a $95 million settlement specifically avoids answering. A 2025 study by researchers at the University of Minnesota, the University of Amsterdam, the Polish Academy of Sciences, and Erasmus University Rotterdam found that beliefs about phones listening to conversations are common, particularly in the United States. Researchers tend to frame this as a problem of perception, that people believe something that is not quite accurate, that they are confusing sophisticated behavioral tracking with microphone surveillance, and that framing is partially fair. The eerie accuracy of modern advertising does not require microphone access. It requires something that is, in many ways, far more impressive and far more unsettling. The ability to predict your behavior based on patterns that you did not know you were creating. Your phone does not need to hear you to know what you want. It already knows. But the framing also obscures something important. The question of whether mainstream advertising platforms are using microphone access without permission is separate from the question of whether your microphone can be, is being, or will be used against your interests. And the answer to that second question, in 2026, in the year when a spyware product called Predator was documented suppressing Apple's orange dot with surgical precision, in the year when 7% of scanned devices showed active security threats, in the year when the commercial spyware industry has grown into a global market worth billions of dollars with clients spanning dozens of governments, the answer to that second question is unambiguously yes. Your microphone is a target. It has always been a target. The orange dot was never a shield. It was always a warning light. And warning lights only work when the system they are connected to has not already been compromised. Dead code found inside the Predator's spyware reveals a development history. Abandoned hooks show the evolution from direct UI manipulation to the cleaner data source interception approach. This is not a company that built one tool and stopped. This is a company that built a tool, tested it, found weaknesses in its own approach, discarded those weaknesses, and built a cleaner version. This is iterative development. This is engineering discipline applied to the problem of making surveillance invisible. And that means what exists today is not the final version. The final version is what comes next. After the next generation of researchers at Jamf publishes the next report, after the next update to iOS introduces whatever new privacy indicators Apple designs in response, after the next round of zero-day exploits gives the next generation of spyware the kernel access it needs to suppress whatever new warning system gets built in its place. Jamf. This is the cycle. Warning system. Bypass. New warning system. New bypass. And somewhere in the middle of that cycle, billions of people are carrying devices they trust more than they should, governed by permissions they do not manage, protected by a small orange dot. They have been told is a guarantee when it was always only a signal. The signal still matters. Watch it. Manage your permissions. Use the app privacy report. Understand which apps have access to what. Take 10 minutes today and go through your microphone permissions the way you would go through the locks on your house. Not because you expect a break-in, but because an unlocked door is an invitation. Do the basic work. It is not dramatic. It is not cinematic. But it is the difference between a phone that is an open channel and a phone that requires some effort to compromise. But do not stop at the basic work. Understand what the basic work cannot protect you from. Understand that there is a layer of surveillance capability in the world right now that your settings menu cannot reach, that your orange dot cannot detect, that your restart cannot clear. Understand that this capability exists, that it is commercially available, that it has been deployed against people who did not know they were targets until it was too late, and that the technology is not standing still. The orange dot is not a lie. It is the best tool Apple could build within the constraints of what is possible. But those constraints have limits, and the people who build tools like Predator have spent years finding exactly where those limits are. So the next time you see that small orange circle appear in the corner of your screen, the next time it flickers on while your phone is supposedly idle or stays lit a few seconds longer than it should, or appears at a moment you cannot explain, do not dismiss it. Do not assume it is nothing. Ask the question. Investigate. Because the orange dot is doing its job in that moment. It is warning you. The real question, the one that no settings menu answers and no $95 million settlement resolves and no press release from any technology company has ever honestly addressed, is what happens in the moments when the dot should be there and is not. What is being captured in the silence your phone is pretending to keep. What is being heard in the conversations you are having right now, in this room, in this moment, near this device that you trust so completely that you have forgotten to question it. That question does not have a comfortable answer yet. And the people who could give you one, the companies that build the spyware, the governments that buy it, the brokers who sell the data it collects, are not talking.